So the medium man's flawed data coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense Logical Reason. And as always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So I want to talk about the medium man. He's a popular YouTuber. He does a lot of statistical and data analyst. I think that's his job. And I believe he did that in some form or fashion with the military. Well, he posts some data, very flawed data, trying to address the stereotype of black men being violent.
Their participation allows our annual report to cover more than 94% of the population of the United States.
Those documents show arrests and known offenders in solved cases, not total crimes, not convictions, and certainly not racial predisposition.
When people quote the FBI's national crime numbers, they rarely explain how those numbers are actually collected. In the United States, there are about 18,000 law enforcement agencies. Roughly 16,300 of them are enrolled in the FBI's crime reporting system, but only about 85% actually submit usable data. That means around 15% of agencies, mostly small rural departments that serve majority white areas, do not report at all. Even though the agencies that do report cover roughly 94% of the U.S. population, the coverage is not even. Urban departments, which serve larger black populations, report far more completely and consistently than suburban or rural departments, which are overwhelmingly white and underreported. So when you hear statistics claiming that black men commit half of all homicides, remember, those figures are built primarily from cities that send their data, not from the rural white jurisdictions that often don't. In other words, the difference isn't in behavior, it's in who gets counted. And here's the second layer of misunderstanding. The FBI doesn't track convictions, it only tracks arrests and reported incidents. Once someone is arrested or labeled a known offender, that number goes into the database, even if the case is later dropped or the person is proven innocent. The Department of Justice and the Bureau of Justice Statistics handle conviction data separately, and those numbers are never the same. So when a pundit says black men commit 50% of homicides, they're really citing arrest data from the agencies that reported, not confirmed convictions nationwide. It's not a measure of guilt, it's a measure of who gets policed, who gets arrested, and which agencies actually send their numbers to Washington.
Each year, roughly half of the United States homicides remain unsolved. And in those unsolved cases, the offender's race is unknown. Yet commentators compare only the solved portion to the entire U.S. population. That's invalid. Solved cases reflect where law enforcement resources and attention are concentrated, primarily in urban centers with large black populations. This creates what criminologists call a clearance bias. It means the visible share of black arrests is inflated by geography and policing intensity, not by behavior. That is how statistical artifact evolves into national talking points.
Okay, so I'm going to unpack this, and I'm going to address it in the chronological order in which it was listed in the video. Now, starting with the, cities don't report crime to the FBI, I'm going to bypass that one because I'm going to deal with that one in a separate video because I'm going to go a little bit more in-depth detail into that one. But so let's go into the next basically area, the next option the next thing he said was, the FBI only attracts they track arrests, not convictions. Now, basically, this is that high exonerated rate argument that you hear from black people, that black men are more likely to be exonerated, which means that they're being more likely to be wrongfully arrested, which I don't necessarily disagree with that. But keep in mind that black men are not the only people who are exonerated for crimes that they didn't commit. But here's the problem with that narrative is it's the mass crime. Again, if you're committing mass crime, that just simply means that you're going to have higher interaction with law enforcement, higher negative interaction with law enforcement. When you commit more crime, you're just going to increase the interaction with law enforcement. And if you have increased interaction with law enforcement, That just simply means that the increase the likelihood of someone being arrested for something that they didn't do. However, typically though, if somebody commits a crime, or if someone commits a crime and the police officer arrests the wrong person, the fact is that the crime was still committed once by someone. So instead of black people being upset and focus on who committed the crime and started all the mess in the first place, they're more focused on the false arrest. In other words, it's just black victimhood, because it supports the black victimhood narrative. The fact is, if people stop committing mass crime, if blacks stop committing mass crime in the hood, you have a dramatic, the interaction between the police and the public will dramatically decrease, which will also dramatically decrease the amount of people who are wrongfully arrested for something that they didn't do. So let's deal with the mass crime let's deal with the problem instead of crying about the repercussion. This seems to be a common trend with black victimhood. Now, the next argument he makes here is that the Department of Justice and the Bureau of Justice Statistics, they handle conviction data separately and they're not the same. Okay, well then how would they handle it? What's the difference then? This argument doesn't make any sense, and it's really moot until we know what's the difference and what's that data mean. Because you just telling me that they basically calculate data separately, or they handle data separately, you're not telling me anything. I need to know what that means and what's the difference in what that means. And this video never said that. Then Medium Man says that half the homicides go unsolved and the race of the person is unknown. Well, gee, of course it's going to be unknown if the case goes unsolved. That means that they haven't found the person that did it. But with that being said, though, I've addressed this before. I say, what group of people, what community is more likely to have unsolved murders or unsolved homicides? Would it be the people who fully participate with the justice system, or would it be people who have a no snitch rule? People who say that snitches being stitches. I would say the people with the no snitch rule. And like I said, if you want to say that there's just as much violence amongst white people, then my question is, where's the evidence? Show me the dead bodies that's piling up, because the white people aren't hiding these bodies. If a person is murdered in a white community, it's not like they just ignoring it. They just leave a body or just the rot on the side of the street. No, they find the body and they do an investigation to try to figure out what happened. The fact is that there's one place on the planet where, in America, in which people say you don't want to be there after dark. Now, oftentimes people talk about sundown towns. There are no damn sundown towns where black people can't go in around white people after dark. That's just them trying to perpetuate nonsense, trying to find something to be victims about the past. The only place that I'm aware of that's really truly sundown towns are places with streets named Martin Luther King Boulevard. These are where black people are. So the sundown towns are places where black people are. But with that being said, I mean, show me that white people in America are committing just as many murders or murder at the same rate as black people. They don't have the data to back that up. So they just assume based off of unsolved murders. But once again, where are basically unsolved murders more likely to be? Around people in the hood, black folks who have a no snitch rule, who basically believe in you don't talk to the police, you don't snitch to the police. Now, the last issue though is this clearance bias argument that he makes up, and that somehow this foolishness of they concentrate assets in the black community. So since they put more assets in the black community, they're more likely to capture crime. There's more over policing argument. This is foolishness. And really, truly, this is a chicken and the egg argument, I always say, because they say that, again, black victims say that the reason why the crime rates are higher in the black community because there's over policing, there are more police officers that's more likely to capture more crime. But then you can also make the argument that, well, the reason why there are more police in the black community because that's where the crime is. If you are a police chief, or you deal with crime in the area and you want to address crime, you're going to allocate resources where the highest crime is. And typically the high crime rates tend to be where black people are. Once again, nobody's moving around black folks in the hood trying to get around them because of low crime rates. People are getting away from the hood because of high crime rates. So now for all the people who have the over-policing argument, my response to that is, what about the over-policing in DC and Memphis? When the National Guard showed up in these areas, the crime dropped immediately. Matter of fact, I've seen several videos of the people in these areas thanking Donald Trump for bringing the National Guard. Now they feel safe in their communities. I saw a video of a guy living in Memphis say, since the National Guard showed up, he ain't heard one gunshot at night. All the residents are saying they feel safe, they can play outside, the kids can play, they feel safe now because of the National Guard. Now, has that over-policing caused crime to go up? No, it caused crime to go down. And why? Well, because law enforcement and authority is a deterrent to crime. I've said this before. If there's over-policing in your community and there's more police, typically that should mean low crime because there's extra police officers. Serves as a deterrent. That's the reason why people hire security guards and off-duty police officers to do security. Why? Because they don't hire them because they believe that more police officers or having that security is going to increase bad activity. No, they do so under the guise of believing that people are less likely to do something if they see an off-duty cop doing security. So basically, police officers and law enforcement serve as a deterrent to crime. If the crime rates are still high in a community with the extra police officers, then you have to address the people. Because typically, if the police officers are capturing crimes and putting the criminals behind bars, that means that the criminals are off the street and they're no longer on the street to commit crime, and crime goes down, such as what we saw with stop and frisk in New York. Also, we saw in the war on drugs, war on crime, we saw a peak arrest in 1989. It was the peak arrest, and crime was actually on the rise by then. We saw peak arrest in 1989. By 1990, crime rates had tailed off. By 91, crime rates were on the decline because they were putting the criminals behind bars and they were no longer on the street to commit crime. So if the crime rate stays high in your community because of over-policing, quote unquote, that means that you keep producing more and more criminals. I see it as a reflection of your community than anything of the police departments and over-policing. Anyway, these are the same tired arguments that black people keep making. And I always say that the crime rates, the high crime rates amongst black people, we're not going to address this by constantly deflecting and trying to find out ways to try to deflect from the truth. We're going to address this by dealing with the truth, acknowledging the fact that the black community has high crime rates in the hoods, in the communities in the hoods, places where you have high rates of single-parent households in the ghettos, and we need to address that and address the behavior. Why? The only way we're going to solve this is by being honest with ourselves, not deflecting. So the media man, the information that he put here is not, again, it's not inaccurate, but it's not 100% true, and that's the problem. We need 100% truth because the truth will set you free. Anyway, y'all, as always, until next time.